Alright, how's it going everyone? Welcome back. Today we're gonna talk about Poison Song teaser. So Tamriel Rebuilt fairly recently released this teaser for the upcoming update. It's actually very interesting because I knew about the upcoming Poison Song, but I always imagined it as a sort of a sidestep from the main timeline. And the main timeline being the series of these main releases of the new regions, new maps, right? When I read through this, I kind of figured out that actually this is not just a mere sidestep, just a little slight overhaul of the previous areas. We're also gonna receive some new regions, but it's just the amount of content and also a couple of controversial things that I want to talk about. I think it's really worth of examining, and I'm gonna read through this page and just offer a couple of my humble comments. That's all. I'm always very excited to talk about Tamriel Rebuilt. Actually, it's my favorite thing, really. I think it's the best thing that happened in it, not just in the Elder Scrolls franchise, but in the gaming world at all. Actually, let me try to explain first what is Poison Song all about. And, let's zoom in on this map for that. Alright, so here we are now, zoomed in, we can see much clearer. I'm just gonna go like really fast through the basics of the Poison Song. What is Poison Song about? So it's an overhaul of the Sundered Scar region. This area already exists in the game of Tamriel Rebuilt, but it's basically a copy-paste of the Bitter Coast with the swamp trees. It's like a recognizable swamp biome from the Bitter Coast. And the reason is it's a very old release. It's been here for years, and it's mostly meant to be a filler, right? To connect old Ebonheart and the central southern Morrowind here, and the eastern Morrowind, Akamora, and going north to the Telvanni lands. It basically served the purpose of this bridge, like a land bridge, and nothing much was going on there. There are a couple of cities or, small towns, actually. Anyways, it was a sign of its time, right? The early stages of Tamriel Rebuilt were mostly reusing the assets, right, and data from the vanilla game. But Tamriel Rebuilt is evolving, it's growing. Now they usually or mostly use custom-made assets, right? So anyways, Bethesda itself, they had this concept of a Great Scathes. I think I pronounced it right. And we could actually see it in the concept map of Morrowind, pre-release. The thing was that this region here, around Molag Mar, it's a Molag Amur region, right? In the vanilla game, right now it's just a basic barren ashland. But in this concept, it was called the Great Scathes, and it was this very volcanic, active region with sulfuric pools. I hope I pronounce all these things right. Geysers, very alien-like looking. They didn't implement this in the game, but the concept was there. And actually, I use a mod. It's one of those satellite mods that go along the beautiful cities of Morrowind. It basically overhauls this region right here into the Great Scathes. What's fun is that it actually works pretty well with the upcoming changes from Tamriel Rebuilt, because they too will also change now this region to resemble this barren, sulfuric Great Scathes biome, I guess, if you call it like that. So that's like the basic focus of the Poison Song. And also the island of Gorne, we see it right here. So I actually did a video on the island of Gorne like quite a while ago, because I was really fascinated by it. Actually, I think the name Poison Song, which is a book in Morrowind, mentions this island. It doesn't mention its exact location, but we know that there is an island of Gorne somewhere in Morrowind, and it belongs to Indoril. Currently it's right here somewhere, so it's on the eastern coast, and I actually really like it because it has this open view to the eastern horizon, right? So they're gonna transfer the island of Gorne from here into the inner sea. And at first I was like, I don't know if I like it. I think actually it makes more sense now when I think about it. So they will still keep the island, the previous island of Gorne here. It will just be redesigned. But the current island of Gorne, again, like you guys can see, is here kind of between the mainland and the Wardenfell. I originally thought that maybe it's too cramped. I mean, there's this body of water, but in the game, it's kind of pretty much scaled down. So I was afraid that it may look cramped. But there might actually be a reason for Gorne being here where it is. I don't want to spoil too much. and I'm pretty sure they're gonna keep this kind of lore. Island of Gorne had some kind of connection with the history of a house they got, the 6th house. And as we know, the 6th house was on Wardenfell, right? This was their territory originally. So it kind of makes sense that their colonists, if you can call that, would kind of settle down on this island. I think it makes more sense here than all the way up here or down here. So yeah, the Island of Gorne and the Sundered Scar region here within the blue frame will be totally redesigned. So yeah, I'm very excited for that. But this is just like one thing. Another thing is that they will actually stretch the map further south within this green frame. So it will literally border Almalexia. Now, we're not gonna get Almalexia anytime soon. I really love that they're gonna extend this land further south, because I was kind of bugged by this narrow passage here. Especially if you look at the whole like overworld map of Morrowind, it kind of just looked like there's a piece of land just cut away. So I'm glad they're gonna extend the land further south. And this is not Sundered Scar, right? This is now Orethan, or we're gonna read later on. This is a new land. Very lush, very green. It's surrounding Almalexia. This is like a heartland Morrowind. And within this red frames, there's a touch-ups or settlement remake area. So this is Aanthirin. It's my favorite area in the game. It goes from Old Ebonheart to the north, even though Old Ebonheart kind of functions as its own unique zone. But technically it's in the Aanthirin. So from Old Ebonheart and just going down the Tyr River to Chapel of Roa Dyr, Almastir, you know, we have Nav Andaram, which will be a player's house in the future. This very beautiful atmospheric village of Imra, you know, all the way down to Narcissus, basically. So this entire stretch is very beautiful. Actually, Aanthirin kind of stops here somewhere. Then we have a Coronati Basin and then Shipalshin with the Narcissus. But this entire stretch down the Tyr River is just something the best. It's a newer release, and you can simply feel the difference in quality between the new releases and the old ones. Which is nothing against, the people who made the old maps. It's just Tamriel Rebuilt really had time to grow, to mature, to develop. And I was really afraid, because what are they doing here now? Why are these places being redesigned? Like, I don't want this to be remade. It's already perfect as it is. So we're gonna read later on what's happening. It's actually not a big deal. They are just slightly touching up some of these villages. The big thing is actually they're gonna change the Indoril architecture. So this is, for most people, the most controversial part. Probably the most controversial move by Tamriel Rebuilt in the history. So anyways, let's go back to the page now, and we're gonna read through and just, comment. Alright, so it says, Grasping Fortune, our biggest and most ambitious expansion to date. So we at Tamriel Rebuilt have in recent months turned most of our attention towards the next upcoming expansion, Poison Song. Long-time followers will know that this, for the first time, means a joinable House Indoril. Oh yeah. In the following article, we aim to dive a little deeper than that and give you a teaser into everything that the expansion will cover. About this joining House Indoril, I think that it has to be a really, really special moment, because House Indoril isn't just another grey house like Redoran or Hlalu. They are very, very special. I personally like them, but there's this aura of mystique because they were kind of present on the Wardenfell, but only as guards, this really ceremonial temple guards. They're basically Dunmer fundamentalists or, conservatives. They're trying to conserve this high Veloti culture that existed during the life of Velot, not Veloti. So the role the Indoril had throughout the years was preserving this original Dunmer culture. So I'd say they may be like a more xenophobic. I don't know if that's the right word. Just hermetic, right? They're very close, not open to outsiders as Hlalu or even Redoran. So even Redoran, they'll hire you if you go and join their guild. No problem, if you can prove yourself. But with Indoril, it has to be special. It has to feel earned. So I think this moment of joining House Indoril, it can't be just, alright, sign up here and you're good to go. No. It needs to be like earned. Like, we gotta do something really, really great to earn the trust in the eyes of the Indoril nobles. It's all about preserving the purity of a Dunmer culture. Now, with that said, House Indoril is not what it used to be. As we know, these are kind of the last days. Like, these are the last days of House Hlaalu and Indoril, so it's a very specific moment. And I'd say that Indoril now are kind of more paranoid even, you know, because they can kind of feel the changes coming. And, you know, the Empire is invading, colonizing. It's just very, very interesting to see how they're going to implement this, joining the House Indoril. Again, like I said, it has to be very, very special. It has to be more challenging. The sub-project that became Poison Song got started already in mid-21, at a time when we were well into development of the experimental Embers of Empire expansion. Embers of Empire was an almost heretical experiment at remaking a large old portion of our mod, namely the western seaboard of the Telvanni Peninsula and settlements like Firewatch and Helnim, which dated in parts back to 2002 and 2003. I'm really glad that they made this decision to go back to previous areas and overhaul them. There's actually pretty good reason for that. What is striking about the Scar as it stands today is that it was developed explicitly as a filler land, i.e. it had very few points of interest and reasons for visiting. The area was largely made by 2003, wow, so we're very old. At a time when Morrowind's continued popularity was by no means a given, and when completing the mod as fast as possible seemed paramount. The world space was crafted using Bitter Coast assets, with a largely flat landscape and with minimal dungeon entrances. So now we have 3 images. It's a view of an old Sundered Scar, so like I said, it's basically a copy-paste of the Bitter Coast. We have Nomi's original sketch of a new Sundered Scar, and we have a Be a Stranger's sketch of the new Sundered Scar looking towards Red Mountain. Pretty amazing. So by 21, they kinda made this new concept of a Sundered Scar as a blasted, sulfurous wasteland based on scrapped Bethesda plans for a Great Scathes region. Yep, serving as something of an extension of the volcanic Molag Amur region on Wardenfell to its north. Yeah, that's it. Lore-wise, the area was to be House Mora's ancient Dimesne, left vacant and decaying following Nerevar's death, never reclaimed by another Indoril lord out of respect for the dead Hortator. So yeah, that's another interesting thing I want to mention, I forgot. Sundered Scar was a domain of a House Mora. House Mora was, from what I understand, a minor great house or a minor house, and Indoril Nerevar originated from this house. And, you know, after things happened at the Red Mountain, Nerevar died or, you know, was killed. Basically, the entire House Mora just kind of like, you know, fell apart. I believe that most of the members kind of just migrated to probably joined House Indoril. I think they saw House Indoril as a sort of a successor. Yeah, it's very crazy about how basically everyone just kind of agreed to leave this area alone. All the ruins of House Mora are probably still there. Now, we're gonna find out that this is a high-level zone. It will be very dangerous. And here we have a screenshot of a newly designed Gorne with a new Indoril architecture. Again, I actually explained already. So yes, it was in the Padomaic Ocean. Now they're gonna transfer it to the Inner Sea. What I also want to mention is, you know, when you play Tamriel Rebuilt, because it's such a huge landmass, there's so many towns, villages. Sometimes we don't even realize, like, some of these villages are actually, you know, mentioned in the lore books. So for example, there's this obscure book somewhere, and, you know, just in one line, single line, just drops this name. Oh yeah, there's this village. And what Tamriel Rebuilt did, they made a list of all these places, all these locations that are confirmed, right? They're canonically confirmed to exist. And they implemented all of them as best as they could, which is really amazing. I mean, that was a hard work, I believe, just going through all these texts, finding all the locations, because often these places are not really, you know, it's not said where exactly they are. You can kind of guess. For example, Gorne. Again, it's a canonical island. It exists. So yeah. And now we see actually the first sample of a new Indoril architecture. So the Chapel of Gorne stands mourning Nerevar with a new Camel Ze in the distance. Level design by Cicero and Prelec. In our lore, the Indoril Chapel of Gorne was raised there in the contemplation of the Holy Temple Island of Wardenfell. In the gameplay and the writing terms, it opens up intriguing possibilities, including better integration of House Indoril into Wardenfell affairs, and a natural jumping off point for the player into the Indoril storyline. Originally made in the green-blue Mournhold tile set from the Tribunal DLC, the Indoril Chapel present on the island has already been remade in our brand new Indoril exterior tile set, inspired by the old Mournhold architecture seen underneath Tribunal's Mournhold sewers. So I guess let's just talk about Indoril architecture. It's really simple actually, it's nothing complicated. When Tamriel Rebuilt was doing all these Indoril structures and locations on the mainland, they didn't have a custom tile set. They used the only one that was accessible or available from the construction set, which was the Mournhold tile set. However, lore-wise, we know that Almalexia basically rebuilt her city. She basically rebuilt using this new architectural style. She wanted her city to be unique, to be grand, ceremonial, which is this Mournhold architecture. Let's call it the Mournhold architecture. Other Indoril locations basically kept their original Indoril architecture. And we know how Indoril architecture used to look like because in the Tribunal DLC, if you go all the way down beneath the sewers, you find the ruins. So TR team did a great job of, examining, analyzing this architecture and basically created this new style. I don't even know how would I describe it really. I'm gonna have to wait for the game and go in and just explore and examine. I think it's very nice. I love the color palette. So this is the new island of Gorne. The previous island of Gorne was actually pretty huge. There was this town and a pretty a big waterfall and a nice forest. So I wonder if they're gonna reduce the size because I just think there's less space between Wardenfell and the mainland. But here we can actually see now this little looped footage. We can actually see, the atmosphere, the colors and the flora. I love this a cracked, dry ground, and it's very alien. It's very different from the current Bitter Coast kind of copy-paste look. Okay, so now let's read the little description of the Sundered Scar. The Sundered Scar is primarily dangerous dungeon territory. In gameplay terms, a high-level wilderness that quests from more docile areas can direct you towards. Wild beasts roam the region, and its small out-of-the-way coves are home to the multitude of hideaways, outcasts, and smuggler gangs moving illicit goods between mountainous Wardenfell and the mainland. In the ruins of ancient civilizations, more serious dangers lurk still. Strewn among all this hazard are crumbling remains of the might of House Mora and the numerous relics of the Nerevar. So I suspect that we're gonna find actual relics that used to belong to Nerevar, Indoril Nerevar. Sulfur pools and volcanoes are some of the many dangers present in the Scar. Level design by Obsidian and Chef. Despite the harsh surroundings, small but hardy folk of Velothi ranchers and sulfur miners eke out a living in Sundered Scar. 3 Velothi settlements dot the region, the biggest being the coastal town of Darvanis, their unofficial capital, transformed from a small shack village in prior versions to a properly permanent Velothi settlement. Darvanis is the center of a small industry of salt mining and purification that provides the economic backbone of the region, but comes at a cost to the health of its inhabitants. So what's interesting about Darvanis is that it doesn't belong to any Grey House. Lacking much Great House presence, the town relies on support from its temple and the limited might of the self-organized militia, the Darvanis Watch. So they basically have this a people's militia to stave off aggressive beasts and bandits. I really like it, it just makes this era even more unique. And here we see the remade town of Marog, level designed by Prelec. On the eastern edge of the region you will find the Supai Caravanserai, where in previous versions of the mod stood the In-Between. I was really surprised because In-Between is really further inland. I didn't know the Poison Song will reach so far into the land. While the old inn was beloved by the fans, its lore hardly made sense. The Outlander-heavy clientele clashed with the tone of traditionalist Eastern Morrowind, especially as the NPCs were presented as looters of the ancient and sacred Dune Akafel. The new Caravanserai, freshly NPC'd, still retains that adventurous atmosphere as well as many of the same NPCs and quests, though substantially Dunmerified. If you guys played, you will know The in-between was this really remote, isolated inn in the middle of nowhere, in a really actually dangerous land. And here we see the screenshot of the new town, Supai Caravanserai. Again, looking very different from the in-between. Even the area, the landscape looks different. And here we see the remade town of Marog. In the current game, the Marog is really just a small Telvanni mushroom village, and nothing really special going on there. It's known for being right next to this giant, colossal ruins of Kemelze. What's really surprising, at least to me, I didn't expect this, Tamriel Rebuilt finally finished Kemelze ruin. And now we are moving south of the Sundered Scar into the Orethan Heartlands. While we hope that you will find the total remake of Sundered Scar exciting enough, especially seeing as it will include tons more quests than were present in the original, by the late 2023 we felt that the expansion needed to be more than a redo. So we heaped a big chunk of wholly new land on top. And here we see the lush Orethan Heartlands. Level design by Fremennik and Sashia. It so happened that by late 23, the first part of this continuing overhaul was ready to start implementation work. That being the updated Orethan region that surrounds the city of Almalexia. The Orethan forms the lush heartland of the Indoril realm that largely feeds the province's capital and is home to the majority of the Morrowind district's agriculture and the population. So the entire Orethan Heartlands will be this green but also colorful landscape, very pleasant, very rustic, like a sort of a green countryside. So here we see the perilous Sundered Scar transitioning into the docile Orethan, and I think it's done very nice. We can slowly see the terrain gradually turning green and lush. What's also characteristic for the Indoril is the use of gardens. They love their gardens, that's for sure, and we're gonna see a lot of them in the Heartlands. In addition, the Orethan Heartland just east of Lake Andram is also where you'll find the Indoril Chapel estate of Nanav, home to the paranoid Indoril Barot, a relatively fortified border estate nevertheless known for the beauty of its airy gardens. Alright, so now actually we're gonna talk a little bit about House Indoril. Adding the slice of Orethan Heartlands to the release unlocked one of the holy grails that TR players had been waiting for more than 20 years. The ability to join House Indoril. So there's a whole separate design document about House Indoril and their characteristics. We're not gonna go over that here, because I just want to focus on the Poison Song expansion. Once the unquestionable hegemons of Morrowind, firm but charitable custodians to the garden that is Morrowind, and unshakable patrons of the Tribunal Temple, the armistice signed between Vivek and Tiber Septim shook the Grey House to its core. Yeah, so this is what I was saying at the beginning. House Indoril is not what it used to be. They're kind of going to this like the traumatic experience, I guess, which makes them even more paranoid. Seeing the surrender of Morrowind to an outlander warlord as a cataclysm, the surviving Indoril lords have been gripped in doubt and misfunction ever since, mirroring what is happening to their patron, the goddess Almalexia. In their nihilism, they have proven unable to unite in the face of serious challenges to their hegemony, much less effectively counteract the increasingly brazen encroachment by houses Hlalu and Telvanni. So yeah, that's actually a very interesting parallel. As we know, Almalexia is also growing paranoid. She's kind of going insane, actually. And the similar thing is going with the House Indoril. We know, I think in Oblivion we find out, or maybe Skyrim, I forgot, after the events of the Morrowind, right, and the fall of a tribunal, many Indoril nobles committed self-murder? What's the like a legit way to say it on YouTube? They basically self-removed themselves, right? So like I said, these are the last days. The addition of the Gorne and Nanav chapels to the already extant Roa Dyr gives us 3 major Indoril power centers, which is enough for the first part of their overarching quest line. So yes, we are having finally like a true quest line for the House Indoril. So for example, we have Indoril Sandil of Gorne, who is the most forward-thinking and adaptable of the 3, and he may agree to become your patron for real advancement in the venerable house, should you humor his fascination with the legacy of Nerevar in a series of high-level quests. Interesting. Alright, So now this is what some people find very controversial. This is the new Roa Dyr. Obviously they had to change the architecture. With these new House Indoril developments, we were faced with the issue of what to do with those bits of a house that were already released in 2019. So let me just summarize. They redesigned all the pre-existing Indoril towns, so the towns that are already in the game, and they overhauled them with a new architecture. And that's all. So here we actually have a couple of screenshots of a new Roa Dyr. So I really love this screenshot with the fireflies. So yeah, Roa Dyr, also for myself, it was one of the most memorable places in all of Morrowind. There's something very, very magical, mystical about it. Just the location and the architecture. But yeah, I understand they had to change it, right? And I'm ready to give it a chance. And you know, judging from these couple of screenshots, I'd say it still looks very, very like a high fantasy. I love these patterns on the rocks or the walls. I think that the new Indoril architecture can also look very, very elegant. But also from a technical point, I think that the Morrowind architecture just isn't very practical. I think it was made by developers just for the Tur Julan DLC. And it was meant just for Morrowind, right? For this particular location. It wasn't really easy to like navigate yourself around. And NPCs were just stuck. Yeah, so I don't know how else to explain. It just wasn't really very practical. But let's read what they say here. Roa Dyr is renowned across Morrowind for the beauty of its gardens and canals. Yeah. Moreover, Roa Dyr has always had many deep-seated technical issues, mostly to do with the fact that the Morrowind tileset introduced in the Tribunal is much less versatile than any that shipped with the original game. And that is true. To compensate for the limited assets, Roa Dyr is clutched or cobbled together from assets in a bewildering variety of orientations and scales. So they basically had to do what they could with the very limited resources, which sometimes it's a good thing actually, because you have to be very creative. Not only is this cobbling very distractingly apparent to the trained eye, it results in the chapel being quite annoying for players to navigate. Kinda, yeah. And often impossible for NPCs, yes. I quested around so many times. I kept going back from Almastir to Roa Dyr like hundreds of times. And it's true. The excessive amount of game objects used in its construction also make Roa Dyr one of the worst performing areas of the mod, to the extent that many players try to avoid going there. In fact, we knew all of that already in 2019, which is why Nomi created the chapel explicitly as a very well executed placeholder. So all this time this was a placeholder. It just happened that it looked very good. You know, and that's the thing. It was impractical, performance unfriendly, technically it just didn't work, but it looked good in a way. But again, I really don't have issue with the new Indoril architecture. I really like it. There's something also very cozy about it. So now here they're gonna talk about what I spoke earlier about redoing some of the Aanthirin villages. It's not a big deal, so I'm gonna skip this part really. Aanthirin is really like, filled with so many like these small Velothi villages or Indoril villages, especially on the eastern side of Tyr River. And currently, like many of these villages have shacks. The thing is, like these villages are very old and they are established and they belong to the Indoril, so they have history behind them. And the process was, well, if these villages exist for millennia, they're established, why would people live in the wooden shacks? Wouldn't they live in like established, normal, like Velothi houses like we see on the screen? So here we have Dondril, we have Wool, and Imra, that's an interesting one. I made a whole video in Imra about Shadows Beneath Imra, Lovecraftian quest. It's one of my favorite places. So Imra will also be slightly redesigned, but it's all for better, so nothing to worry about. Imra still retains its atmosphere as a shady fishing town, but now with 80% less cobbling. So far, everything's really, really good. This is Selen, again, another of those villages. So they still have wooden shacks here and there, but it's mostly Velothi houses. They're gonna keep wooden shacks here in the real Swan. The thing is that on the Wardenfell in the vanilla game, wooden shacks are mostly reserved for coastal villages because they're on the water. So real Swan is on the lake, therefore they have wooden shacks. And there's this beautiful screenshot of the remade ruins of Tur Julan, overlooking the Aanthirin. So I just love this area. So that's the deal. Tur Julan was a proper Indoril town, or a chapel town. And what happened with the coming of the Imperials, of the Empire, and Hlaalu alongside, they basically said, you know what? We're gonna retreat. Instead of burning down the city, they decided to just abandon, and they summoned a bunch of, like a legion of Daedra to protect the city. So basically the entire Indoril town just stands there on the top of that hill. It's overtaken by the Daedra. And it's really amazing because you go there and some of these Daedra, especially outside, are not even hostile, they're friendly. It's a unique Morrowind experience. The Indoril town that's occupied by Daedra, and some of them kind of take this role seriously. Like they literally live there, right? Some of them really wish to go back to Oblivion. They want you to, like, you know, kill them. Because Daedra are immortal. If you kill them, they just go back to Oblivion. That's it. So now we're gonna end, finally, this analysis with what I believe is the most controversial part. So what's going on here? Actually, you know what? Let's read first. Let's read through. Old Ebonheart Quest touch-ups. Another loose thread from around the same area are the quest lines in Old Ebonheart. One of the trade-offs of our episodic release structure is siloing of quests, where Elder Scrolls 3 regularly sent you all across Warnefell with its quests. Our release structure forces us to mostly stick to within a single expansion's area. Hence, we are always on the lookout for opportunities to tie different release areas better together. I mean, that all makes sense. One of the obvious ways to do so with Poison Song and the areas directly west of it would be to redirect some old Ebonheart quests to the Sundered Scar region. After all, the Scar is a large, reasonably high-level wilderness, a perfect place to send players on mid to high-level sojourns away from the crammed city. But since we are messing around with old Ebonheart already, the fact is that many of its quest lines remain half-finished in the original 2018 release. Wow, it's been 7 years already? This was most apparent with the Imperial Cult and the Fighters Guild factions, which ended on cliffhangers. But plans were left unfinished with many of other quest lines too. So with the Poison Song, we finally found the will and opportunity to finalize these. So now we're getting to dangerous territory, okay? The old Ebonheart Fighters Guild is an elite guild chapter that has the luxury of staying above the fray of house politics. Something that many guild chapters in Morrowind are unable to do. Its revamped questline will now focus on contracts given by Imperial citizens and the city's complex relationship with the Indoril. In the current questline, there's already some, slight contact with the Indoril, actually, so it all makes sense. But I will agree, the old Ebonheart Fighters Guild, as amazing as it is, it's actually very, very short. But I knew they were simply waiting to expand. I'm really excited for this. Sounds great. The Imperial Cult questline will end its teasing of the sadly unimplementable mystery play. Actually, I don't think I ever finished it, so I don't know what this is all about. New additions to the questline will instead focus on Talos worship, Brass Fever, and touch upon old Ebonheart's history in its own way. And the whole thing will end on a grand, old-fashioned artifact hunt, as Imperial Cult questlines always do. Okay, they kinda teased a few very interesting things. Talos worship. Yeah, Talos worship is not banned here. This is not Skyrim in the 4th era. Yeah, so the Imperial Cult in the old Ebonheart is kind of focused on Talos. Their chapel is dedicated to Talos, so it makes sense. Brass Fever. You know what? I'm not sure what it's all about. However, I remember in Morrowind, there was an idea for I think it was meant for the Imperial Legion. There was this removed quest that was supposed to send us to research Numidium, or the Brass Tower, and to look for the plans and, the Dwarven schemes or whatever. So I don't know what they mean about the Brass Fever. Is it related to Numidium? Because Talos used Numidium, right? The Imperial Legion questline will be made a little more vanilla-like, with a reduction in scripted sequences that reduce player agency. I think I know exactly what they're talking about. If you pay attention, they keep mentioning this vanilla like this, vanilla like that. So for the Imperial Cult, they said we're gonna end up on a grand, old-fashioned artifact hunt, just as a Imperial Cult questlines do. In vanilla, the Imperial Cult questline is all about hunting for artifacts, right? So the Imperial Legion will also be kind of reduced. So there's this quest. It's very script heavy, but I really like it. We basically assume the position of a commanding officer. He's like busy, he has to go do something, and he's like, okay, can you just spend a day here in my position and give orders to other officers, to other legionnaires? You basically become this quest-giving NPC. You stand on this spot, and these legionnaires come to you, they approach, and they ask like the silliest questions, like, they had this duty to go to this town, and they ask, what should I do? Each character, you have several options how to answer. You can mess with them, or you can be serious. I think it's just a very, very fun, kind of like a role play, scripted event. So it looks to me like they're gonna remove it. And I wonder if they think it's not serious enough, or it's like too silly. But I think it's actually was very, very nice. It was a really nice break from vanilla. There's like nothing like that in vanilla. I remember being so surprised. I was just laughing all the way through. Reduction in scripted sequences that reduce player agency. It will also tie in more with old Ebonheart teams like the Delagia gang, that is the antagonist to the local Thieves guild. Yeah, Delagia gang, we encounter them when playing with the Thieves guild, right? And I really love this element because just having this gang, it made old Ebonheart seem more like a city, like a true city. Like any true city, there's like, corruption, there's a criminal activity, organized crime, whatever you want to call it. And it's actually not the Thieves Guild. Like, we were the good guys, and the Lagia gang were the bad guys. And it was a really, really amazing storyline. But I guess they're gonna reuse the Lagia gang within the Imperial Legion questline. So I wonder what's gonna happen with the Delagia gang and their involvement with the Thieves Guild questline. And the end piece of the Imperial Legion questline will be the investigation of General Cassic's guild, the Simulacrum era leader of old Ebonheart, who started a war with the Firewatch. Previously an odd, half-miscellaneous quest, it will now be given the centrality and gravity it deserves. Okay, this sounds great. So I don't want to spoil too much, but there's this nice quest for the Imperial Legion where we have to decide General Cassic's destiny, basically. And here's a big deal. The General Cassic was leader of entire legion in all of Morrowind. And the story, like it says here, ties in with the Simulacrum era, which is, the events of Daggerfell. Some of the deepest changes will be in the old Ebonheart Mages Guild questline. While it contained some great moments, the questline was a patchwork of different ideas, and we were never satisfied with the full package. The remade version will make the whole thing more coherent, cut the more frustrating quest while adding many new ones, and bring both Khalaan and the Puzzle Mansion, previously side gigs, to the center. The questline will now finish on high-stakes Daedric negotiations deep in Oblivion. So I can't comment much on this, because I haven't played much of the Mages Guild in the old Ebonheart, but I'm very aware of the Khalaan. So the city of Old Ebonheart is built on a location where previously was the city of Khalaan. It was an Indoril city. Again, I spoke about this Indoril ruin that was kind of abandoned, and they summoned a bunch of Daedra to take over it. So in the case of Khalaan, it was even more extreme. What they did, and which is kind of insane, because the Imperials were coming. So instead of letting the Imperials take over the city of Khalaan, they literally made this pact with the Daedra to transfer entire city into the realm of Oblivion. So there's this entire Indoril city that sits in the pocket realm of Oblivion. I explored it a little bit, and I know they plan to redesign it and make it, even more content heavy. There's a really amazing lore behind all of it, and it's just an amazing level. So I'm really glad that they're going to focus even more to that area. Perhaps more controversial are the touch-ups to the old Ebonheart Thieves Guild. Well, I'd say this is truly one of the most controversial parts of this update. The whole questline, with its often railroady structure, hews far from the simple Morrowind-style, role-player-friendly stuff that we prefer these days. Alright, this sentence, I feel like it says a lot, but At the same time, I feel like I don't really understand what are they trying to say. Actually, let me read through all of it. But it is undoubtedly fun and beloved by many, so the changes aren't very deep at all. Don't worry. Oh, when you have to say don't worry, I worry. We have cut some of the more superfluous choices, made the technical structure of the quest much more maintainable, made it more critical to develop good thieving skills, and removed some of the moralizing regarding player choices. The beginning quest, however, which with its obvious and unavoidable hazing ritual was a frequent target of player criticism, has been cut. Oh, okay, we have little problems here. Actually, I just want to understand really what's going on here, because I really don't think I understand. Some time ago, I play as a Nord Knight, default Knight, and I started in the old Ebonheart, and totally randomly, I just joined the Thieves Guild. I found them in a tavern, and what followed was probably the most fun I had in Morrowind ever, by playing some of the probably best written quest lines. Old Ebonheart's Thieves Guild questline was just from the beginning to the end. It felt like you were in a movie, with so many characters that also matter, that are not just some NPCs that stand there and give orders. It really, really felt amazing. It brought the whole Morrowind experience to a whole new level. And I'm not just saying that, I really mean it. And this comes from someone who actually doesn't care much about Thieves Guild. I play mostly as a traditional knight. The amazing part was that you were actually the good guy. You were actually fighting against the truly, truly bad guys, like the Lagia gang, for example. But there were also other things. So there were these parallel storylines, and there were other characters, members of the guild, who were also active. You would kind of compete with them. So it felt very dynamic. And again, like I said, it felt like a movie. It's just really, really amazing. So I'm really surprised, from what I understand at least, they want to streamline it more, to make it more vanilla-like. I haven't played vanilla Thieves Guild, surprise, surprise. But I think it's mostly just about, okay, go here and steal something and come back. Why would you do that? Why would you reduce the complexity? So I'm just trying to really process this information, because even they say it's beloved by many. So they say the changes aren't very deep at all. We have cut some of the more superfluous choices and made the technical structure of the quest much more maintainable. So was it just simply the problem of having too much scripting, that it requires too much maintenance, right? It could be that, actually. But I think they could just say, I think we just went too complicated. It's too complex for Morrowind. We need to streamline it a little bit. I'll be fine with that. Now, this is a fun part also. We made it more critical to develop good thieving skills. So like I said, in that playthrough when I joined the Thieves Guild, I was literally a level 1 knight, default knight. I had absolutely nothing with the thieving and stealth. And I finished the whole quest line as a very, very low level knight. And the way I did it actually was fun. So I had to improvise. I had to make gold. I had to pay trainers to train me some certain skills. I had to buy scrolls, for opening locks or being invisible or whatnot. So you could do the entire quest line of the, Thieves Guild by improvising. And I think that's the fun part of Morrowind. For me, this is the true meaning of role-playing. Let me play this quest line the way I want. Oh, there's this issue, there's this quest, I have to infiltrate the manor and, talk with people, and then I have to pretend to be someone else and steal something. Well, I can do it by being a thief and having really good stealth skills and, sneaking around. But I can also do it maybe by having a good charisma and speechcraft. Or maybe I'm in the possession of certain scrolls that can allow me to do that. They may be expensive, but, I have gold. I was always a fan of having different paths towards the same goal. And Tamriel Rebuilt was always very good with that. So many quest lines, you can reach the same goal by following different paths. One of the strengths of Tamriel Rebuilt, I'd say. So I don't know what I mean by superfluous choices. Yeah, again, they say it's more critical to develop good thieving skills. Okay, I can understand. Maybe they don't want level 1 knight to be able to finish the entire quest line. But I understand also this part. Removed some of the moralizing regarding player choices. So I just said earlier, one of the best parts is that we can actually make choices and they can be good or bad, right? There's a true morality at play. So I really don't understand what do they mean by moralizing regarding player. on so many steps, there were choices ahead of us, and we had to choose, which path to take. There's this one character who was kind of a member of the guild, and he poses as someone who is like antagonistic towards, and actually he was kind of. All along the quest line or the storyline, we encounter him, and we can always choose to help him or, not help him, whatever. And these choices actually mattered. This whole approach of, let's simplify everything, make it more vanilla-like. I'm very curious as to how far they're gonna go. They say not very deep. They say the changes are not very deep. So let's see. Really, all this is just, guessing. We're gonna have to wait for the release and see what's going on. To be honest, I was a little bit surprised and shocked. This part, especially about Thieves Guild. Again, coming from someone who actually doesn't really care much, but I enjoy this questline so much. And this last part is also something that I really don't understand, and I actually don't agree with. So I don't want to spoil too much, but I guess if they're gonna remove it, it's not even a spoiler anymore at this point. The way we are introduced to the Thieves Guild, it's very, very memorable to me. Again, it felt like a movie. Like we are sent to steal something, some item, and we go there, and things happen that are out of our control. It's scripted, and we basically get busted, arrested, we get questioned, and then we can choose, are we gonna like spill the beans? It's very, very fun. It's actually very, how can I say, dramatic moment. It surely was dramatic for me. And then when you go back, basically you find out it was all just it was a test to see if you're worthy to become a member of Thieves Guild. I'm not very familiar with what they say here. It was a frequent target of player criticism. I've never seen anyone criticizing this quest, and why would you criticize? I don't understand what's the problem with this quest. It was a really memorable, how can I say, introduction to the quest line, but also to the character of Captain Phantus. I mean, I'd imagine this is something what the Thieves Guild would do with the new members. It kind of makes sense. So yeah, I'm really, really kind of puzzled with this last paragraph. Maybe it's just, too time consuming to write and script all of that. I'm gonna repeat myself, one of the strengths of Tamriel Rebuilt was just how complex their quest lines can be. And you often have clearly an option or a path to be, bad or good, or some variation in between. It's not always black and white, obviously, but there are definitely, choices where you can be a bad guy or a good guy. But also, we have to remember that one of the design philosophies of Tamriel Rebuilt is to stay true to the vanilla vision, right? At least originally, their point was to simply extend the game onto the mainland. I suspect maybe someone felt like the new Tamriel Rebuilt releases are simply straying too far from this original vision, but I would disagree with that. We have so many tools, we have so many years of experience, new engines, but even if you don't play with mods, if you just play vanilla Morrowind, why not make Morrowind even more deep and more complex with more role-playing options and choices? So overall, I disagree with streamlining, with oversimplifying, while I also understand that it may be too time-consuming. Maybe in some ways you feel like, oh, this is just simply too different from the vanilla content. I love Morrowind. It's a perfect game as it is. It's perfect in all of its imperfections, but I think that Tamriel Rebuilt really, really managed to, bring the whole experience to a new level. So I just wonder if this is a new trend for Tamriel Rebuilt to make their quests resemble vanilla ones more. Like we don't want to stray too much from the vanilla style. I don't know, we'll see. I just share my opinions, really, that's all. Oh yeah, and there's also like an East Empire Company quest line. In the previous release, there was just a couple of missions, I believe. But now there's a full-on quest line, I believe. And there might be also the old Ebonheart nightly tournament. But probably not, we'll see. And that's about it. It's a pretty big update, like I said. In the end, they just talk about the timeline, the schedule. We are months away from the release of Poison Song, so it could be the end of this year, but most likely next year. If Narcissus was released in May, and I hope I'm right, then Poison Song will probably be released like a year from that. That's early next year. Because I think Tamriel Rebuilt said that they plan like a major release once a year, ideally. So yeah, I'm really, really excited. And after the Poison Song, so probably year after 2027, we will have Wealth Beyond Measure, which will finish House Indoril. That's gonna be a big one. So overall, these are my thoughts on the Poison Song release. I'm really, really, really surprised just by the amount of new content. I didn't expect so much. So it's great. I'm loving it. I'm kind of, I don't want to say worried, but I'm kind of curious about those quest rewrites, especially for the Thieves Guild and the Fighters Guild and the Legion. So I'm really, really curious about, is this like a sign of a new writing direction for a Tamriel Rebuilt? And what does it mean for the future of Tamriel Rebuilt? We'll see. Sorry for so much rant. I hope you guys enjoyed this really, really chaotic video. And thank you for watching, and stay tuned, and I see you soon.